Welcome to G-Fest 2026, held in Chicago, Illinois for over the last 30 years. Thousands of people from all over the globe come to this location to celebrate a giant lizard. But what do you have to understand about Godzilla is that he comes out of Japanese culture, history, and their arts. So let's go out in Chicago first, explore the history of how the Kaiju came out of Japanese culture, then come back here, have a great time with our G-Fest fans, then head over to the Pickwick tonight to see Godzilla -1, my favorite Godzilla movie.
Let there be no mistake. We shall completely destroy Japan's power to make war.
We are at the Art Institute of Chicago, exploring the museum's Japanese galleries. Now, Godzilla didn't come out of nowhere. Toho Studios built him on centuries of Japanese art that featured giant dragons, supernatural creatures, and a legendary giant catfish believed to cause earthquakes. In traditional paintings and woodblock prints, these creatures weren't just monsters, they represented the unstoppable power of nature. Godzilla took that same idea and gave it a modern twist, becoming a giant force of nature that reflected Japan's fears in the atomic age. Traditional gardens taught the Japanese people to see nature as something to respect, not control. That idea found its way into Toho's monster movies. The quiet beauty, the balance, and the spiritual connection to the natural world found in these gardens helped shape films like Godzilla, where the monsters aren't just villains, they're powerful forces of nature reminding humanity what happens when that balance is broken. At first glance, Japan's famous snow monkeys and Toho's giant monsters don't seem to have much in common, but they both reflect Japan's deep respect for nature. Snow monkeys thrive in the country's rugged volcanic mountains and hot springs, while monsters like Godzilla are portrayed as powerful forces of nature rather than simple villains. Together, they remind us of a central idea in Japanese culture. Humanity doesn't conquer nature, we learn to live alongside it and respect its power.
Well, I guess they're not going to attack us now.
Yeah, I know, that's what I was thinking.
We're fine now.
Just give them their space. Look at them working. You get what you wanted?
That, my friends, is the Field Museum. The Field Museum has partnered with Pokémon to open the Pokémon Fossil Museum. This exhibit's going to be open to April 11, 2027, so you have plenty of time to get out. The fact that Americans have embraced both Godzilla and Pokémon says a lot about the connection between Japan and America. While the two countries have very different histories, both admire stories about adventure, resilience, and larger-than-life heroes. Godzilla introduced Americans to Japanese respect for the power of nature, while Pokémon celebrates curiosity, friendship, and living in harmony with the natural world. Their success in the United States shows that great stories can cross cultures and remind us, despite our differences, people everywhere are drawn to wonder, courage, and imagination. Don't get me wrong, Godzilla didn't create America's interest in Japan by itself, but it helped open the door. For many Americans, Godzilla was their first real introduction to Japanese culture, and that curiosity grew through anime, Pokémon, Nintendo, and other Japanese IP. As interest in Japan grew, so did the demand for authentic food, books, and everyday products, paving the way for places like Masuwa Marketplace here. In many ways, Godzilla was one of the very first ambassadors of modern Japanese culture in America. This unassuming restaurant just outside Chicago tells a much bigger story than a bowl of noodles. Chicago Ramen was founded by a Tokyo-born chef who brought authentic Japanese ramen to the Midwest. Instead of changing the food to fit American taste, he invited Americans to experience ramen the way it's enjoyed in Japan. Today, people drive from across the region to eat here, a sign of just how far Japanese cuisine has come in the United States. What began as an unfamiliar dish has become a beloved comfort food, proving that when cultures meet through great food, everyone leaves richer. Japan is one of America's largest trading partners, with more than $300 billion in trade every year. America sells Japan energy, aircraft, beef, corn, and medical technology, while Japan sells us automobiles, auto parts, machinery, and electronics. Today, America buys about $64 billion more in goods from Japan than it sells back. One way to close that gap would be to increase American exports and encourage more Japanese companies to build their products here in the United States, creating jobs while strengthening an already vital partnership between our two great nations. If you want to see Japan's influence on American fashion, look no further than Uniqlo. Founded in Japan in 1984, the company has grown to more than 80 U.S. stores, including a new flagship right here in Chicago, and they have over 2,500 stores worldwide. Its simple, high-quality Japanese design philosophy has helped reshape how Americans dress, proving that Japanese fashion isn't just influencing the United States, it's becoming part of everyday American life. Every July, thousands of Godzilla fans from around the world gather near Chicago for G-Fest, the largest annual Godzilla and giant monster convention outside Japan. It began in 1994 when about 20 contributors to G-Fan magazine met in a small hotel near O'Hare Airport to celebrate their shared love of Godzilla. That gathering was such a success that it grew into a full convention the following year. More than 30 years later, G-Fest welcomes over 8,000 fans for a weekend of Japanese film screenings, celebrity guests from Toho Studios, models and costume contests, art, collectibles, and one of the world's largest Kaiju vendor rooms. Now here's the part that tells the whole story. It isn't just the monsters, the models, or the movie posters that bring people here. It's the people themselves. For a few days, strangers become old friends. Families make new traditions. Lifelong fans swap stories like they have known each other forever. That's the kind of magic you can't buy a ticket for. It only happens when people gather around something they love for a lifetime. Now, take a look around. Some folks don't just watch the movies, they become part of them. Heroes, villains, monsters, every costume stitched together with patience, imagination, and a little bit of nerve. Around here, Nobody's pretending to be someone else. They're celebrating the characters that fired up their imaginations years ago and somehow never really left. That's a hard thing not to admire. Now, every convention has a heartbeat, and this is it, the vendor hall. Table after table packed with treasures you won't find just anywhere. Vintage toys, rare collectibles, artwork, books, and enough Godzilla history to fill a museum. You can come here with a shopping list, but chances are you'll leave with something you never knew you needed. That's the way these places work. Now, the G-Fest Vendor Hall is one of the largest Godzilla marketplaces on the planet. Every table tells a different story. Vintage toys from the 1960s, brand new Japanese imports, garage kits, movie posters, original artwork. Some pieces cost $20, others will set you back thousands. Most of these dealers aren't here by accident. They spend the year traveling a convention circuit. G-Fest, Comic-Cons, Wonderfest, regional toy shows, and anime conventions, following the fans wherever the next gathering takes them. For many, this isn't a hobby anymore, it's a legitimate business. A booth with a major convention can cost anywhere from a few $100s to well over $1,000 once you add travel, hotel, shipping, and inventory. Some vendors barely cover their expenses. Others have a great weekend and sell tens of thousands of dollars in collectibles. The difference usually comes down to what they're selling and whether they brought something collectors can't find anywhere else. That's the thrill of this place. Every table might hold the one piece you spent years hunting, and around here, finding it feels a little like striking gold. Behind every great convention is something you can't put on display. The people willing to share what they know. The panels at G-Fest bring together filmmakers, historians, artists, collectors, and fans who have spent decades studying the King of the Monsters from every angle. They swap stories from behind the scenes, uncovering forgotten pieces of movie history, and debate everything from special effects to the best monster battles ever filmed. For an hour or two, the audience isn't just watching Godzilla, they're learning why these films have endured for generations. And that's what keeps G-Fest more than a convention. It keeps it a living community.
That's insane. And TriStar felt that this was just way too much money, which is a recurring thing. A little bit of interesting history here. The 1980s Godzilla 3D film that I mentioned earlier, the Steve Miner, Fred Decker film that never got made, the reason that that never got made, even though it was shopped to multiple studios, is because the studios said, Godzilla is a dumb kids thing and we're not spending $100 million on it because it's a kids movie. Boo. Yes, please. Boo. Boo. Nonsense.
At G-Fest, the games don't end in the vendor halls. Entire rooms are set aside where fans can step into Godzilla's world through classic arcade machines, vintage consoles, and the latest monster brawlers. You'll find lifelong fans introducing newcomers to games they grew up with, while the next generation discovers what it's like to take control of the King of the Monsters for the very first time. It's a reminder that Godzilla has never belonged to just one generation. Every new game, every high score, and every roar echoing through these rooms keeps that legend alive. Not every battle at G-Fest is fought on a screen. In this room, the monsters come to life, one roll of the dice and one carefully planned move at a time. Around these tables, strategy replaces special effects. Friends and complete strangers square off in games inspired by Godzilla's greatest battles, trading laughs, close calls, and the occasional crushing defeat. It's proof that a 70-year-old movie monster can still bring people together in new ways. Whether you're commanding an army of Kaiju, which sounds fun, or simply cheering from the sidelines, everyone here is playing the same game, celebrating the King of the Monsters. Hollywood has computers. Dojo Studios has imagination. Here at G-Fest, Fans keep the classic art of Japanese monster movies alive with rubber suits, miniature cities, practical effects, and plenty of creativity. It's a reminder that you don't need a Hollywood budget to capture the magic of Godzilla. You just need passion. After hours of exploring G-Fest, the food trucks become the perfect pit stop. They offer quick, affordable meals with plenty of variety, letting fans grab a bite and get right back to the action. It's a simple reminder that great convention food doesn't have to come from a restaurant. Sometimes the best meals are served through a window on four wheels. Godzilla may be larger than life on the silver screen, but here, he fits on a tabletop. Don't let the size fool you though. Some of these models represent hundreds of hours of work. Every scale, every paint stroke, every tiny detail is the product of patience and craftsmanship. They're not just building monsters, they're recreating movie history by hand. For the judges, it's about precision. For the builders, it's about pride. And for the rest of us, it's proof that the line between hobby and art disappeared a long time ago. When the convention halls begin to quiet down, the action moves to one of the grand old movie palaces outside of Chicago, the historic Pickwick Theater. This is where G-Fest reminds everyone why they're here in the very first place. The movie marathon is more than a series of screenings. It's a chance to experience Godzilla the way generations of fans first did, on the big screen, surrounded by an audience that laughs, cheers, and applauds every unforgettable entrance. Over the years, G-Fest has presented everything from the 1954 original to modern blockbusters, rare Japanese prints, fan favorites, and even North American theatrical premieres that many fans never thought they'd see in a theater. There's something special about watching The King of the Monsters with hundreds of people who know every roar, every theme song, and every classic line. For a few hours, you're not just watching a movie, you're sharing an experience that has become one of G-Fest's oldest and most beloved traditions. Long before it became a pilgrimage for Godzilla fans, this was one of America's great movie palaces. The Pickwick Theater opened in 1928 at the height of Hollywood's golden age, when going to the movies wasn't just entertainment, it was an event. Designed in the bold Art Deco style, its towering marquee became the landmark of Park Ridge, welcoming audience for both silent films and vaudeville performances. Nearly a century later, the theater still looks much as it did in its glory days. The magnificent auditorium, inspired by ancient Mesoamerican architecture, has been carefully preserved, earning the Pickwick a place on the National Registry of Historic Places in 1975. For G-Fest fans, there couldn't be a more fitting home. Godzilla was born during the age of great movie palaces, and watching the King of the Monsters beneath the Pickwick soaring ceilings feels less like seeing a film and more like stepping back into the golden age of cinema. Some places show movies. The Pickwick reminds us why we fell in love with them in the very first place. Godzilla -1 takes us to a devastated Japan just after the end of World War II, where a nation already at its lowest point is pushed even further by the arrival of Godzilla. Through the eyes of a former kamikaze pilot, the film explores guilt, courage, and redemption as ordinary people choose to fight back. Widely praised as one of the greatest Godzilla films ever made, it honors the franchise origins while proving the King of the Monsters still has powerful stories to tell.
Godzilla -1.
Now Godzilla makes more sense to you, hopefully. For the longtime fan, you got every bit of it. For the newcomer, Godzilla is fun. It comes out of Japanese tradition, it comes out of their arts, it comes out of their culture, their history. So hopefully, appreciate Godzilla just a little more.